Imagine waking up naked in the Alaskan wilderness. No shoes, no coat, temperature dropping fast. And somewhere behind you in the tree line, a man with a rifle is giving you a head start. This isn't a horror movie plot. This happened over and over again for more than a decade, and the man doing the hunting looked like the last person on earth you'd suspect. He owned the local bakery. He coached Little League. Cops stopped by his shop every morning for coffee and donuts. They called him Bob. The world would come to know him as the Butcher Baker. Robert Christian Hansen was born on February 15, 1939, in the small town of Esterville, Iowa. His father was a Danish immigrant baker, strict, domineering, the kind of man who dragged his son out of bed at 2 in the morning to work the ovens. School day or not, young Robert wasn't exactly built for that kind of world. He stuttered. His face was scarred with severe acne. He was small, awkward, and endlessly bullied. While other boys were dating, Hansen couldn't get a girl to look at him twice. And that rejection curdled into something darker: resentment, rage, a hunger to be feared instead of ignored. By 21, that rage had a body count of consequences. Hansen talked a teenage employee into helping him burn down a school bus garage. He got caught. His young wife divorced him while he sat in a cell. He served 20 months. It should have been a wake-up call. Instead, it was a preview. Hansen bounced through a few more brushes with the law, petty theft, more fire, before remarrying and, in 1967, making the move that would give him exactly what he craved: a fresh start and a wilderness big enough to hide anything. He moved to Anchorage, Alaska. In Anchorage, Robert Hansen became a new man. On paper, anyway. He opened a bakery downtown. He married, raised 2 kids, and built a reputation as a pillar of the community. He was an award-winning big game hunter, so skilled with a bow and rifle that his trophies made the local record books. Police officers walked into his shop every day for free coffee, laughing with the mousy little baker behind the counter. Nobody in Anchorage had any reason to be afraid of Bob Hansen. But by the mid-1970s, Anchorage was changing. The construction of the 800-mile Trans-Alaska Pipeline had flooded the city with tens of thousands of transient workers. And with them came a booming, barely regulated world of strip clubs and street-level sex work. It was a world full of women nobody was tracking closely. Women who could vanish, and it might be weeks before anyone even filed a report. Hansen understood that better than anyone. And starting around 1971, he began using it. His method was almost always the same. He'd approach a dancer or a sex worker, offer cash, and get her into his car or his private plane. Then the mask would drop. He'd hold her at gunpoint, drive or fly her deep into the wilderness north of Anchorage, sometimes to a remote cabin. And there, he committed his crime. And then came the part that made Robert Hansen almost singular in the history of American serial killers. He would let her go. He'd strip her of her clothes, hand her a head start into the freezing Alaskan bush, and then hunt her down himself, tracking her through the wild with a bow and later a semi-automatic hunting rifle, like she was game. He kept trophies, jewelry pulled off his victims, hidden away in his attic like hunting medals. For 12 years, he did this and walked back into town to sell donuts the next morning. Every predator like this eventually makes a mistake. For Robert Hansen, that mistake had a name: Cindy Paulson. In June of 1983, Hansen picked up 17-year-old Paulson, a young sex worker, at gunpoint. He handcuffed her and drove her toward the airport, planning to fly her out to his usual hunting ground. But at the airstrip, in one desperate moment, Paulson broke free. Still cuffed, barefoot, she ran into the road and flagged down a passing truck driver who called the police. For once, the victim had a story to tell, and Robert Hansen suddenly had an alibi problem. Investigators pulled his friends in for questioning, and the alibi they'd given him started falling apart within hours. Police searched Hansen's bakery and his home. What they found in that house would end up in true crime documentaries for the next 40 years. Behind a false wall panel in his basement, they discovered a hidden, soundproofed room, the same one where Paulson had been held. Tucked into his headboard was a marked-up map of the Anchorage region, dotted with more than 20 locations. In the attic, jewelry stolen from victims, and the murder weapon itself, a .223 caliber rifle. Confronted with the evidence, Hansen's carefully built double life collapsed in real time. The assistant district attorney who questioned him later described watching Hansen physically transform in the interrogation room, his face flushing red, the calm Baker persona burning away until, in the attorney's words, he was no longer looking at Bob the Baker. He was looking at a serial killer. Hansen confessed to everything: 17 murders, 30 rapes, 12 years of hunting human beings for sport. He even flew with investigators over the wilderness north of Anchorage, pointing out from the air exactly where he'd buried his victims. In February of 1984, Robert Hansen pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder as part of a deal that let prosecutors avoid 17 separate trials. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 461 years without any chance of parole. Alaska had no death penalty, so Hansen made one final request: that he serve his time out of state, away from anyone who might have known his victims, and that the details of his case stay out of the national spotlight. For a while, it mostly did, but the wilderness didn't give up its secrets all at once. Based on the map from his headboard, troopers recovered the remains of 8 more victims in 1984 alone. In total, 12 bodies were eventually found. 5 more women he confessed to killing were never recovered at all, lost somewhere in hundreds of square miles of Alaskan bush. One victim went unidentified for nearly 40 years, known only by the name investigators gave her, Eklutna Annie. It wasn't until 2021, through genetic genealogy, that she was finally given her real name back: Robin Pelkey. Robert Hansen died in prison in August of 2014, at the age of 75. He never faced a public trial. He never stood in a courtroom while his victims' families watched him convicted. Because of the plea deal, in some sense, he never fully answered for what he did. For 12 years, Robert Hansen was 2 men: the nervous little baker who couldn't finish a sentence without stuttering, and a hunter who tracked human beings through the snow for sport and got away with it because he chose victims the world had already decided not to look for. That's the part of this story that should stay with you. Not just the horror of what Hansen did, but how long he got to keep doing it simply because nobody was checking on the women he chose. If this story hit you the way it hit me, hit subscribe. There's more of these coming. And let me know in the comments, what part of this case do you think deserves its own deep dive?